And now on the line is Councillor John Walsh. John is the Labour Party councillor for Castleknock, and he was the Labour Party candidate in Dublin West in the last general election. John, welcome back to Near FM.
Hi Darren, very happy to be on Near FM.
Okay, John, today is only my second ever interview with you on Near FM, and our first interview was a few years ago, as I rarely cover politics or local politics on Near FM. Before we talk about Ériu Community College in Hansfield, can you tell me, first of all, John, as to what you thought about the general election a few months ago, both in terms of how you personally did and your party did in that election?
Yeah, sure, Darren. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that generally speaking, we were happy with the Labour Party result. I mean, we gained both votes and seats for the first time, really in 10 years. And obviously we moved from 6 seats to 11, which was a really good result. We also gained votes. So to some extent, the result was a turning point in Labour Party support. And in Dublin West, while I was disappointed not to take a seat, we also gained. We took 2 seats in the local elections. I was elected in Castleknock. My colleague Mary McCamley was re-elected in Mulhuddard at the head of the poll. And we also we gained ground at the general election. We were certainly in contention for the final seat. So overall, it was a positive result for us.
Many people are listening to our podcast today from outside Dublin West probably don't know this, but I find it remarkable how close the last 2 seats were in Dublin West in terms of the last 2 seats were filled by candidates whose first preference vote wasn't huge, wasn't it?
That's right. I mean, the first 3, I suppose the first 3 candidates elected all got more than 10%, and all we're all elected by clear-cut margins. And then the final 2 seats were very competitive. So it was really a 4-way contest, you could say, for 2 seats. And I was in contention, and obviously, and so were Aon too. And obviously, the seats then were taken by the Green Party, by Roderick O'Gorman and Ruth Coppinger. But it was a very close election, and I felt throughout that it was a competitive election, and that we had we had a good chance of being in contention. And I was pleased with the vote, and just would like to thank everyone who supported me in the election. Okay,
and since the election and the formation of the new Dáil, we now have a new government, and there is a huge issue about the allocation for speaking for the regional independence group, and also Donald Trump is busy as American president. So there are a lot of things happening nationally and internationally in politics, aren't there, John?
Yeah, that's right, Darren. And I think it's a great shame that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael chose to do a deal with Michael Lowry on behalf of the regional independents. I mean, only a few years ago, Fine Gael forced Michael Lowry to resign from the party. They wouldn't give him a nomination to run. And following the report of the Moriarty Tribunal, the leader of Fianna Fáil said that Michael Lowry wasn't fit to hold office. And yet now they were happy to jump back into bed with him and to do a deal. And I think that's just incredibly disappointing. In relation to the speaking rights row, it was just extraordinary that the regional independents thought they could have it both ways, and that they could simultaneously have 4 ministerial posts, but have their remaining members pose as opposition TDs, and that just wasn't acceptable to any opposition party.
We talk about national politics there. International politics is a bit of a mess, isn't it, at the moment with Donald Trump, do you think?
Absolutely. I think we saw only on the disgraceful scenes in the Oval Office where Donald Trump and JP Vance engaged in kind of really schoolyard bullying of the president of Ukraine. Just shows the extent to which leadership in the United States has really fallen off a cliff, and there's really an ongoing crisis in international politics and economics because of the kind of narrow-minded and egotistical policies of Donald Trump, and the really kind of ego-driven. Even today, Donald Trump imposed tariffs on Canada and Mexico, for no reason really other than to serve his own ego and his kind of really bizarre idea that somehow the United States can annex Canada. Unfortunately, I think there's quite a lot of signs that Donald Trump has gone off the deep end. That the emperor has no clothes, as it were. That he's not able to function. But unfortunately, European leaders are having to cope with that and put up with it.
I find it remarkable as well that, like Ursula von der Leyen said today, that we're in an age of rearmament. So, like, even though he gets on with Putin at the moment anyway, it looks like countries across Europe will have to increase spending on defence big time. I find it remarkable that we should even be in that situation. Do you?
Yeah, I think it's I think it's very disappointing that I think we thought we had moved on from the great conflicts of the 20th century where totalitarian powers thought they could absorb other countries and deny people's rights and invade other countries. And unfortunately, Putin's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, that was the act of a 19th century despot. He acted like a kind of a modern day czar, and showed absolute contempt for the human rights and of the people of Ukraine and the territorial integrity of the country. And it left really European nations and the United States with very little alternative but to support Ukraine. I think what Donald Trump is doing now is not really promoting peace. I think, in fairness, Keir Starmer was right when he said that what's needed is a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, and that means Ukraine has to be at the table, and that the interests of Ukraine have to be protected in any negotiation.
Okay, we could talk all day about national, international politics,
Yeah.
but we'll move on to the main reason I got in touch with you for this interview. First of all, just let you know, if you don't know this, John, Near FM's catchment area is firstly northeast Dublin City, but we cover stories from other parts of the city, country and world too. A lot of our listeners today in Dublin Northeast, John, may not know Hansfield, that region in general, and the issue with Ériu Community College. So, can you start off, please, by telling our listeners a bit about where Hansfield is, and then tell them about the issue, what the issue with the school is?
Sure. So, Hansfield is part of Ongar, which is among the fastest growing areas in the country. And like Dublin 15 is a very young area. Fingal has the youngest population in the country, and within Fingal, Dublin 15 is the fastest growing area. In fact, Dublin 15 has probably been the fastest growing area in the country in the census going back 20 years. And Ongar has seen massive housing development, which is needed. That housing is absolutely needed. But the delivery of schools, school places, supports for children with additional needs has lagged dramatically behind that. And what happened there about in 2020, the department authorised the creation of a new community college called Ériu Community College in Hansfield, which is in Ongar, not far from the. It's between Clr and Clr on one side and County Meath, the Meath County boundary on the other. So Ériu was set up in temporary accommodation in Hansfield, and has been very much appreciated by residents in the area. But unfortunately, last year, in the middle of last year, without any warning, the Department of Education made a unilateral decision. Didn't consult anyone, didn't consult parents, didn't consult the school board of management, of which I'm a member. And didn't engage in any consultation with local representatives. They made a unilateral decision to move Ériu Community College from one end of Dublin 15 to the other. So to move it from Hansfield and Ongar to Holywood Rath, which is the top end of Dublin 15. I suppose the easiest way to explain it is that Hansfield is closer to County Meath, whereas Hollystown, in terms of other areas of Dublin, would be closer to Finglas. So that would require parents to send their children 8 kilometres in the morning rush hour across one of the busiest suburban areas in Dublin. And it was just a ludicrous decision, made absolutely no sense. And it's made in defiance of the reality, that the demographic realities, which is that the population in Ongar and Hansfield is simply exploding. And to give one example, there was recently a long-term 10-year planning application was approved for the Barnhill, Barbarastown area beside Hansfield for more than 1,200 new housing units, all of which are needed and which desperately need a new post-primary school. And to make it even worse, the residents who are currently living around Ériu and those who will move in to the new housing units over the next 10 years, they have access to only one other post-primary school. They're not in the catchment area for any of the other big schools in Dublin 15, such as Setanta, which is not far away. So they have a very limited choice in where they send their children to school, and really they made an act of faith in Ériu, and now the rug has been pulled out from under the school and the parents.
What I find remarkable about Hansfield, the Ongar region, and you said there yourself, the area is growing hugely. I think it's am I right? It's a strategic development zone, and also what I find remarkable that part of Dublin 15 is that Hansfield and Ongar are multicultural areas, aren't they, John?
Oh, absolutely. Firstly, you're right. Hansfield is a strategic development zone. It has seen, huge development over the last 5 years. The population of Ongar is the youngest in Dublin City and County by a long way, and it's very much a diverse, multicultural area with a lot of different kind of nationalities. It's very rich in terms of its cultural and religious and national diversity. Really, Dublin 15 has been suffering for years from incompetent planning by the Department of Education, where there's very substantial housing development, and then there's a total failure to provide infrastructure, particularly school places. And unfortunately, this is just another example, maybe the worst actually, of atrocious planning by the Department of Education and failure to listen to people on the ground.
Okay, would it be accurate to say, John, that there is a lot of disappointment in the Hansfield-Ongar area about the stances of the two local government party TDs that have taken on this issue? I'm talking about Jack Chambers and Emer Curry.
I think there's a lot of shock and anger among residents in Ongar and Hansfield at the decision firstly taken in an arbitrary way by the Department of Education, and at the refusal of the Minister for Education or the Department to meet with parents. And I think there is a very strong, there's a lot of disappointment with the government for allowing this decision to be taken and for not forcing the department to reconsider. And I think there is an onus on the two government representatives in the constituency to ensure that at the very least the Minister for Education actually meets with parents, that she should visit the school, and that she should take the time to familiarise herself with the problems that are with the huge problems created by this decision, and that obviously hasn't happened yet. And the failure of the minister and the department to engage with parents is a cause of great disappointment and anger. I personally think it's completely unacceptable, and it shows a complete contempt and disregard for parents and for the school.
Okay, Helen McEntee is now the Minister for Education, and before her it was, what's that lady's name? It was the last minister?
Norma Foley, yeah. And
can you tell me? Yeah, can you tell me what's there on the Department of Education's rationale on this issue, John?
Sorry, Darren, just say that again.
Can you tell me what the Minister of Education and the Department of Education's rationale is on this issue for moving the school?
Sure. So the rationale is that there's enough school places in the Ongar area, but that a new school is needed in the Turlestown Mulhuddard area. And the rationale for that is not on the department side that there's not enough school places, but that there's a significant movement of students. This is what the minister said last week. There's a significant movement of students out of Mulhuddard, Turlestown, into schools in other catchment areas in Dublin 15, and that therefore a new school is needed. Now, I would absolutely agree that a new school is needed for Hollystown and Turlestown. And what's required actually is a new school for Hollystown to be based in Hollywood Rath, and for Ériu to get a permanent building in the Ongar Hansfield area, so that it can serve its current catchment area. So what happened here, I think, is unprecedented, where the Department of Education first allocated Ériu to serve the West Blanchardstown catchment area, which includes Ongar and Hansfield, and is now going to essentially pull the school out of that catchment area and move it to Mulhuddard Turlestown, which is a different educational catchment area. I don't think that has ever happened with an established school, so the rationale the department has given is full of holes. I mean, firstly, they're underestimating the scale of the demand for school places in Ongar and Hansfield, with a new development of over 1,200 houses and apartments. And then secondly, they're not taking into account that very few that people currently living in the Hansfield area have only two options. They've only got Ériu and Hansfield Educate together, and a single school is absolutely not going to be enough for them. So they fail to take into account the catchment area as it currently stands. It doesn't adequately provide for parents in the area. And finally, I think it's ridiculous to expect. It's ridiculous to deny people in Hollystown a new school, which they should have, and then force the children in Ériu to travel across the length of Dublin 15 in the morning. There's actually no bus route. There's no bus route from Ongar and Hansfield to Hollywood Rath.
I read an article during the general election. I think you were quoted in the Northside People saying that people in Hansfield were kind of angry that Jack Chambers hadn't spoken publicly on the issue. Have Jack Chambers and Ian McCurry since then come out and called on the Minister for Education to meet with the school board or school parents?
Well, I attended before the general election. I attended a public meeting which was which all or almost all politicians in the area were at, including government, including Jack Chambers and Ian McCurry. So obviously, kind of government representatives are well aware of the anger within the community. And in fairness to them, they were at that meeting. I think it's disappointing that there was nobody from the Department of Education, or that the Minister for Education, Norma Foley, didn't send anyone to that meeting. And Norma Foley was absolutely contemptuous. Like she totally failed to engage with local parents and the local community. So that certainly caused anger. Then since the general election, government representatives have been very quiet about Ériu. And it seems that, there's a hope that perhaps this situation will go away. But the decision taken by the department really risks doing fundamental damage to Ériu as a school, because parents are in a catch-22 situation. That's where they keep their children in it, or they try and find another school, which would be difficult, because Ériu may be moving to Hollywood Rath. And there's also a high level of uncertainty then for parents which then nobody ever wants for their children's education. And there's I mean, the reality is that the rug has been pulled out from under parents. Because they'd sent their children to Ériu in good faith, and they now find that Ériu may be moving to Hollywood Rath within a few years.
I find it just remarkable that the school can move so far, Okay, John, it's great talking to you today in Air FM, get an update for our listeners on what's going on, even though there's no news at the moment as regards that. There's no other news, is there, as regards the school at the moment?
No, the one thing I'd say, Darren, I suppose I've called on the minister, and I'm just making a call to the minister to engage directly with the parents of Ériu. And in fairness to the minister, she's visited other schools in the constituency. I mean, the minister was in Cllr Community School last week. I very much welcome that. And I'm calling on the minister to come out to Hansfield, to sit down with the Parents Association and to listen to the arguments made by the Parents Association and local representatives. I think she needs to hear those arguments for herself, because they are convincing and they're backed by evidence. It's really important that she would do that. I suppose just to say that this, unfortunately, is another example of incompetent and incoherent planning by the Department of Education. And Dublin 15 has had to put up with this for many years, where you have kind of developer-led planning of estates. Housing is built, which is absolutely needed, and then there is a complete failure to provide essential infrastructure like schools, childcare, and public transport. And it's quite wrong for the minister or for the department to argue that there's enough places in other schools in the area to accommodate Ongar. Most schools in the area, for example, Cllr Community College or Schools Setanta, are absolutely bursting at the seams.